Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. How are you? I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hello? I cannot hear you. I cannot hear you. Hello?
Everyone is still in the last
Hello,
meeting.
can you hear me?
Hello. Everyone is still in the last meeting.
Steven, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hello.
Okay, cool.
Hello. Yeah. Yeah. Everyone else is still in the last meeting. It seems like.
Oh yeah, SIG, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me. Yeah, I don't have anything formal prepared per se. I think maybe we can.
Yeah. So we can. Yeah. I mean, see if you can have any. I mean, your. Are you able to present this time? I think that's one thing to check.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand. Like, I wanted to, but then don't have anything formal prepared. Definitely.
I know,
have...
but then you last time you're not able to. You're not able to share a screen, right? So
yeah,
are you able to now?
Let's try this.
Uh-huh.
Okay, let's see.
Hey, cool. Now that works. Yeah, let's see if the folks are coming on. Yeah, and then.
Yeah, but no, I'm just saying that I don't have anything formal prepared. Though I wanted to.
No, I mean the one thing so we talked about, we would like to enlist people help on connecting with you to on creating that VM.
Yeah, we should bring that up
with Pro. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where
we
we
should
need
have at least a contact person that would be able to like do the work with you.
Yeah, exactly, right. Like we need to, and then we can talk more about Pro. But then I don't have anything formal prepared per se, like I said. But yeah, we can initiate that conversation and then see.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, your doc, you haven't sent it out, so I guess we're not going to talk about that.
Oh, you mean the release wise?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I mean, you can. Well, I mean, we're supposed to review it a little more, I guess. and then we can post it. Actually,
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
being recorded, by the way.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I can start. I can't really start the meeting yet, so to speak, until more folks are joining, I guess. Hello, Tina.
Hi, Stephen. Double
Hello.
booked with our internal meeting. Sorry about that.
Oh, were you in the last meeting? I actually I got out, so I don't know whether or not they're still talking right now.
When I left, they are still talking.
Oh, yeah, I don't know when I don't know how long we're gonna have to wait for guys to get on.
Okay.
Oh, Wim's here, so I guess some discussion must have been over by now.
Hey, sorry, yeah, I was still in the task.
Yeah, no,
discussion.
I would expect that from.
Yeah, I was just asking my question, so sorry.
Hello. I'll probably drop off at around 11:30 Central Time. So, FYI,
Okay.
and follow up later on the agenda notes.
Okay. Actually, so what are this of which actually this is for which. So what's the state of our VM creation? So Alan and I talked about this. Now
Yeah.
Prow is is up. We haven't targeted for any repos yet, but one thing that we want to experiment is, can we do at the end of Prow executions, when it kicks in, we would like to not post submit per se, but then maybe an interval, a periodic test that would, for one thing, creates that VM on the Nephew Google account, Google GCE, and then bring it up. So
Yeah.
it's
So let
something
me
we
give
can
you some context. After December, I tried to actually, I mean, it definitely worked on the Google GCE's, that particular project that was created by John. And along the way, I also tried to, beginning this year, I tried to bring up a Fedora VM. And I tried applying some of those Ansible playbooks, and one or two I found very specific to Fedora and Red Hat OS, systems, that some changes needed to be made for Docker. And along the way, we also found out that, there are certain things that we probably want to use, like a root user for certain things. And also because some of the playbooks were very specific to Ubuntu, the Debian systems, it was using apt. I think my changes that I pushed some PRs to actually make it very generic to use the package manager of Ansible, to be able to use the same Ansible playbooks to be able to, and the tasks to be able to deploy to both Ubuntu and Fedora as well. And there are some PRs. I don't know if Wim or anybody else, I know Wim, you became the co-chair only recently, but I think all the merge rights for the PRs are mainly with John, I believe, at this point of time. If those get merged, I think we're in good shape.
Yeah, I think it's John and you, I think, have the merge. I don't have any
No,
merge.
I don't have the
right?
merge
I think
rights,
Steven. So there is a few PRs that are ready to be merged.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I noticed that. Sorry, very sorry. I'm supposed to catch up.
So there is a PR. So there is, I think, Vish, so you did the fixes for Fedora, right? I did a PR for, what you saw is that in the UI, there was some representation that were not correct because we were not setting the labels properly. So that's fixed. I think there is one more fix. I don't think I have the PR, but I will do where the temp directory in 2 files, it's hard coded. So I'll fix that instead of using the variable. And I believe with that, I know that at least 6 or 7 people have succeeded to deploy it.
Yeah, exactly. And
in various environments. One of the things that is also new, I don't know how much it is known, but there is also, let's say, an implementation using Docker in Docker. So you can now install the whole thing using a Docker container. So it uses Docker within a Docker.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I think Dan,
the Nint,
Dan
Dan did that. So I trusted that as well, by the way. So that works.
So that basically creates, that creates the entire set of clusters in just one Docker container?
Yes, so the advantage of that is that you don't have to do the pre-install stuff. So in other words, so there is 2 ways to implement or use this. I think Dan uses it with Google Workspace, which makes it very tied to Google Workspace, but you can also do it independently. So you still have to spin up a VM and then install the Docker inside. So that means the only thing that you have to install in the Docker, in the VM is Docker, right? But nothing else.
I see.
And I built another flavor, but it's not yet in, I didn't submit a PR, but I discussed it with Dan to actually, because what he does right now in the Docker container, he installs everything. So you have to wait 10 minutes before everything is up. I built a flavor of it that you still have a human, because a lot of people try to install it and they want to see what's going on. So I built let's say another flavor of that implementation that Dan did, which gives you that ability to, so you basically put up the Docker image, and then you basically still have to do the Ansible scripts, and you could do them in one by one and see what happens. But it's actually a flavor.
The Docker image that was spin up has all the things already pre-installed. So that's a major advantage.
Yes,
I guess.
correct. That's a major advantage of the approach, in my view, because I'm trying to help the people in China, but it's the environment is so So the people in China mobile try to install, but their environment is so specific. So this Docker image would be a huge advantage because you basically get everything.
So basically, it is underneath calling your Ansible playbooks, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So what he does, what we do is we create a Docker image, which has the pre-install stuff done, right? And
I don't think it's automated.
Yeah. So in Dan's implementation, that is the PR. It basically runs all the Ansible playbook. So basically, you install the Docker image. And you start, so basically you get up to the point that everything is done. The problem is you have to wait some time, right? But I also, so the big advantage of that is that I think in everybody other than in China, we all were successful one way or another to, No, and you have access, see the UI, for example, you need to have a Google access, right? Which is not the case, I think, in China. So they are struggling with all this type of stuff. So I'm trying to compile a new version for them, which has not that authentication, but it's really challenging to help them because I don't see what they are doing, and then you have the time zone different. So the big advantage of the Docker container, in my view, is that you don't have to all this pre-install stuff. It's completely gone. But it's a very different way that people are used to.
So at this point, when you spin up, at this point, if you spin up that Docker, they would automatically invoke the Ansible playbooks. So at the end of that, you would have all the client clusters set up just by
everything is run. Yeah, it just takes some time. That's
actually kind of helpful, Arwen. But anyway, there's hands raised. So Tal, go ahead. I think you're the first one.
Yeah, so I know I probably sound as like a broken record by now, but I think
Not
we've
none.
really overcomplicated it. I will share a link here of a repo. I've shared it before, but I found a really easy way to set up a system using Podman without root, without anything. You can create multiple kind clusters. I think it would run absolutely everywhere. Nothing new that needs to be installed beyond kind. You could create additional Multis networks using the built-in kind CNIs. I think this would be the most straightforward way to deploy and test. You can have as many clusters as you want locally, no virtual machines, nothing, no root. I hope we can go back and consider it. It seems like we're quite far along the train right now with supporting what we have, but it sounds like it's complicated.
No, not really. I mean,
No, that's
not
not.
Ansible
It's not
playbooks.
correct. I think the only thing that you have is you have to. There's a few prerequisites you have to install, which is Docker. But for example, in China, it's a big issue because they don't have access to the regular repos that we have. But everywhere else, it's easy. There's
Okay.
no struggle at all.
Oh, you mean URLs in terms of Docker Hub or some repository where we're hosting?
Yeah, all of that stuff. Yeah, all of that stuff. It's a challenge. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay.
Because I think I see we had a few issues or bugs, right? But they are resolved. So I think it's not difficult because I've installed it like 15 to 20 times without any issues. The issue is basically in China it's the environment is a challenge.
Right.
But it's not complicated, I think.
Okay. Are they able to do it for now, or are they trying on something else first?
So now we are struggling with the UI.
I see. Yeah.
Which has a direct connection to Google, I think, for authentication
I see.
in the UI.
Perhaps we should forgone the UI. I think there's ways to not do it with UI. Right?
Yeah, that's what I said. Just to kept for now is what I said to them.
Yeah, to get the feet right. So okay, go ahead, Arwen. Sorry.
Hi, this is mostly a question for Wim and Wim, I suppose. So this the latest version of bringing up the kind cluster where everything is pre-installed. So is this already in the Nephew project, Wim, by any chance?
Yeah, it is in the One Summit repo.
Yes, it's in the One Summit. Yeah.
And it's already updated with the recent updates that you guys are talking about, is it?
It needs to be merged. That is where I think John has all the merge rights.
Oh, I see. That's
Yes,
what
we need
so
to.
I see a bunch of open pull requests. So we need to merge those.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me get to that today.
Okay, and then
So you also have merge requests, merge rights, Stephen?
Yeah, of course. Yes.
I think
so. I'll get to them today. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
I think it's Steven and John. I think have them.
And in terms of steps to bring up this setup, right? Are those documented in these PRs as well?
Yes.
Okay. I see.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
So going back to Arwen, I guess. So the idea would be at this point, if we have a Docker base setup that you don't have to actually even invoke the Ansible playbook from the automation scripts, would that be easier for you to set up the periodic tests framework?
I think we need to understand, like, one thing is, like, that's why I want to make sure that all of us like are on the same page in terms of like what Prow can and cannot do, right? Like once we are on the same page, then we can kind of work together. So maybe I can share something here.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, except Ravi has a question. So
yeah, please
go ahead.
Yeah, just one comment. I don't know why this class came. So I'm not. So in this current, with all the Ansible scripts that we have for bringing up the client clusters and all. So once you have all the entire workflow done, right? I mean, if you think about okay, how do I repeat this to somebody? And I kind of demoed the system internally. The only way I was doing is okay, I would go back into my repo, deploy, kind of delete, my final deployment package from the repo, and I do that from the pods. And I basically apply the 5GC service topology, And when I do that, I constantly always I see the entry, the NAT definitely the NAT parameter is not completely populated. So I have to go and kind of do it manually on the GitHub, and then then it reconciles and all that. I'm not sure if people I've seen this problem for a long time, and that's how I manually fix it. So I just wanted to bring it out there. So if you guys are thinking about how do you kind of repeatedly do this, there still seems to be some bugs in that workflow.
Hey, it'll be great to actually open issue. That's what I've been doing, and a couple of us have been doing.
Yeah, I know the issue. It's an issue in Porsche. So what happens is that so you approve the package, right? And then it's closed. And so that's so not in Porsche. So actually the UPF deploy. So we need to have a trigger in the UPF deployment to tell to basically reopen the package. So the problem which we have with what you have, Ravi, is that you install it, right? So at some point you approve, right? So then you see the deployment happening, and that's the demo, right? The problem is that what happens in the initial workflow when the GitHub so the repo is there, what happens is during that whole dehydration, we basically approve the package in the repo, right? And from the moment it's approved, there is no mechanism right now to reopen that thing. And so the problem is that when you go to the workflow, okay, so in the IPAM and the NOT, there's no way I can update the package because it's closed. So it's and that's the problem. So we need a way that if you reinvoke, that we basically create a version 2 or something like that of the. So we need to reopen the package to be able to do it. That's kind of where the issue is.
Oh yeah, no, I see most of the times I think that thing about preconditions can be repeated. So I mean, what I do is primarily kind of delete the kind of those packages from the deployment repos, and I just kind of rename it in the new object, the free 5GC, and then apply it. Then all the controllers kick in. But the preconditions still like this. I have to check the precondition. Most of the time, it is stuck at that some kind of those entry manifests not doing, and then I have to reapply it and so on. So I think you also mentioned about some race conditions happening there, the IP pool and the NAT kind of and those injectors kind of not syncing up properly. Probably still that issue, but it is.
But if you have it, maybe we can debug it to see where the. I know one of the issues that you mentioned that you should be more. I ran into that a few times myself. So but I have to delete. So what I'm doing is I'm deleting the package completely. So the advantage when you have Gitea, for example, is that your repos are local, right? So you basically, I use Gitea these days rather than GitHub, because then you basically, get rid of the repos by itself. So you basically go always to the same workflow. So that is still an issue when you update the system. But that's where I've seen some issues still.
Yeah, it's good to capture that somewhere so that people who are new trying this see that, okay, this is an expected bug, and then, we can say, okay, there is a remedial, this is what you're supposed to do things manually at the Git repo end or something, and it gets fixed. So most of the time it will come, if you just do that, it will come and the UPF container is still in that container creating phase, and then you have to fix the, not Maculan, but the multis, that CNI, that NAD has to be fixed for it to be in that running state.
So it'll be great if Wim or Ravi, if you guys can open an issue in that Nephew, the 1/22 workshop. That way, I have not got to the point that you have done, Ravi or Wim. So it'd be good to know that. Yeah. Would appreciate if one of you guys open an issue.
The issue is updates. The issue is updates, or at least that's my what I understand.
So I know you have.
I don't know whether that's exactly.
Yeah, I know you have one of the Wim. You pushed a PR, right? Was saying that add catalog with the right metadata. Is it for this or for something else?
No, that's not this. So because the update is a bigger discussion in my view, because see, when we did the demo, we just did install, right? So we basically do the dehydration once and for all. But so updates has implication everywhere, in my view.
Yeah,
Have we done updates? Do we have workflows for updates?
No, we have not anything. So it goes all the way. So we have to discuss how that would work. We haven't. Yeah, we had. Yeah, I know that there was a PR in the package deployment for John that one of the developers did. So I don't know whether he has that, but it has implications all over the place.
Okay. So I guess Ravi done.
so-
Tao, your hand's raised. I guess this is for the previous time your hand was raised. Okay. Go ahead, Aaron.
No, I just had a question. So the integration test environment for all, I mean, for now, what we are doing is we are just bringing up a VM with the right set of requisite binaries and everything, right? That is where we are, right? But as far as the testing itself goes, we want to do it, we are doing it manually. Is that right? Or do we have any automated testing also?
No, there's no automated test yet. So yeah, Aravind, if I may, Stephen. So yeah, I've added some tests in my IPAM in the meantime, and I asked one of my colleagues to try Prow out and to see how that would work. Right? That is that possible? Something to do? So because I've added a bunch of tests in the IPAM in the meantime, like module tests and some system tests, so we could use that in order to see how that workflow would work together with Prow. I don't know whether.
Yes. No, we should absolutely do that. So let me share something which is very, very simple example. I don't know if that is that okay, Stephen?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, hopefully that helps. Okay, so let's see. 1 second, I'm just trying to share my screen.
Because there's multiple workflows, I think that we have to do. One is basically how you upload code, right, and prove that you have coverage. And then the second thing is to do system type of testing, right?
Right. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
So here we have a very simple test, right? Like just for illustration purpose, we have two functions, right? Add, subtract. And we have the corresponding test for that, for example, right? Test add, test subtract. These are unit tests, obviously. And then, so Prow has this concept. There are two types of Prow tests that you can write, right? Like one is in repo config, they call it, where whatever Prow jobs that you want to set up, they live in your repo itself. Like, for example, this is an FEO test Prow project repo, or this could be IPAM, for example. And you can write your pre-submit jobs right there, like this. So for example, what this will do is the name of this pre-submit job is nmath test, right? Let's ignore these for now. Always run just means that for every PR, this will run pre-submit, right? And what this does is it brings up a container and it executes this command. But one thing that is implicit is that this repo itself will be available when this container is brought up. It's kind of like that repo is cloned and it's ready to it's available in that container, right? So when I run go test, actually what will happen is in this repo itself is available in that container, like I said, right? So this will get run. So this math test.go will get executed, and you will get that unit testing in your CI/CD pipeline, right? So an illustration for this is, for example, here, what I did was I kind of made the add function a subtract function. So obviously the unit test failed, and you can see that that unit test is failing. And when you go to details, it tells you that the expected result is 0, and whatever in the unit test, you can see it through Prow, right? So I would imagine for IPAM, we could do something similar. All we need to do is two things. Sorry, go back here. So we just need to add something like a .prow.yaml. And if you have unit test, whatever, unit test written in that directory, for example, you can just say go test. We can just try to integrate this at a very basic level and then see where it goes, right? This is one thing. But besides this, we also need to tell Prow to monitor this IPAM repo, right? That's another thing we need to do in addition to this, because otherwise Prow will not know this, right? So
yeah,
for
that was my thing is how do I point the IPAM repo to the Prow? Yeah.
Yes, that's where I'm going. So we have this test infra, which is the one that manages the Prow infrastructure, right? So here, let me see. Give me 1 second. Yeah, if you see here, we have something called as in repo config, right? In this config generic YAML file. And here for now, what I've did is enabled, and I've enabled it only for test pro project. So what we need to try is here in line 14, we just need to add vim/ipam controller :true.
Okay.
So your org and your repo. Once you do that and put the .yaml file in your repo, I would expect things to work.
Okay.
So that's something we could try, and then we can follow up in Slack to see how the integration went.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's try to do that this week. We'll figure out.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm adding a bunch of module unit tests in the meantime, so that's covered, right?
Yes, exactly.
And then
exactly. I mean, we can
at
just
least
try.
we have an example on how we would do it for a module that would have to be integrated, so
Yes.
we can put some documentation, right?
Yes.
That's step number 1, right? And then we have the second thing that we have to do probably is the system test, right? So the test on top of the Ansible stuff itself. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is for unit test, right? Like whatever we just discussed is
Yeah.
for IP unit test. The second thing is whatever we were discussing earlier in the meeting is the kind clusters and everything. For that, so there is this notion of periodic tests in Prow. So what we just discussed now is for unit test. Looks like the recommended approach is what we just did. Like for all the unit tests, let's say IPAM or let's say 5G topology controller or whatever repos we create. Each repo would have their own .prow YAML. You could either create a .prow YAML, I think, or you could create a .prow directory, and then you can put all the different kinds of job. And those are the two options, right? So for all the unit tests.
Arvind, I'm sorry.
Go
One
ahead.
question, fundamental.
Yes.
The way that you showed in the config map, is that the standard way to make the pro be aware of the repos?
Yes, that is a standard way of doing it. For in repo configurations, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes. So we were saying that for unit testing, right? So we have two kinds of configs, right? Like one is for unit testing, the recommended way. I was talking to some Prow team, and they were saying that the recommended way is to just do decentralized, which is each repo will have its own .prow.yaml file, for example. IPAM will have its own, 5G topology controller, for example, will have its own, and so on. So that's how we manage unit test. But there is also this notion of periodic tests. Like, for example, integration tests could be one thing which we run every 2 hours, for example, right? Or something like that. For that, looks like we cannot do it in repo because it's, by definition, it's integration, right? So there looks like the approach that people have been taking is in this test infra, which is where we manage the configurations for the Pro infrastructure itself, right? Here itself, they will create like a jobs directory somewhere here, let's say. And jobs directory would contain jobs that will, all the periodic jobs will be set up from this centralized repository. When I looked around Kubernetes, and looks like that's the approach they are taking. All the periodic jobs, you set it up using the central repository. All the unit tests and other such, you just decentralize and put it in distributed across different repositories. So for integration, what I would imagine is here probably we need to have a job that does two things. One is it sets up the environment, the kind clusters and whatnot periodically, let's say, and then it runs the integration test and then tears it down. So if the way we set up the integration environment is like, let's say, invoking a script, then it's very easy. Like if you can create a make file or something that will set up that environment, or Ansible script, then we can just call it from the Prow, and then it will set it up, and then we can start executing tests. But we need to figure out what is the framework we will use for integration test, actually writing the integration test. But at least we can first start with setting up the environment through Prow. Yeah, I'll pause there. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Arvind, again. So again, a question and maybe a comment based on what you said. So let me get my understanding correct. When you say in the centralized repository, what you meant by integration testing is where you bring codes from different repos together and then test them together. Is that what you meant?
Yeah. So essentially what we did for one summit, right? I'm thinking we have a VM, right? And then we are spinning up a client cluster on it. And then in the client cluster, we set up all the different components, right? Like IPAM, 5G topology controller, all these kind of live in that kind cluster, and we want to test them together, right? We want to be able to, let's say, push a 5G topology CR, CRD, and then we want to see that manifest in our edge clusters, right?
Yeah.
Let's say that's one integration test, right? But
Yeah,
for that,
yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah.
no, for that first, in an automated way, we are doing it manually right now, right? Like, but we want that to be done in our GCP project somehow periodically, right? Let's say that's the goal that we are setting for ourselves. Then how do we do that while integrating it with Prow, right? So there is something called as periodic job in Prow, just like I showed pre-submit right now, right? We also have this notion of periodic job. Let's say every 2 hours, we want to set up this kind cluster, test something where we bring in IPAM, 5G topology controller, everything, set it up, and then maybe push a CR somehow, and then verify that that CR manifested in creation of UPF and whatnot, right? That, let's say that's a very basic integration test.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
Thanks, Arvind. Now that I understand what the intention is, I wanted to differentiate between, at least in my nomenclature, integration versus system test. So in each repo, right, unit test is you're just testing a particular Go file or maybe a particular function. So basically the boundaries are well defined. For example, if you're testing a method, that is the boundary for that unit test. You're not going anything else, all the dependencies that goes into that particular Go file or that particular method are mocked, right? So integration test, in my view, is integrating different components of the same repo. For example, obviously you'll have multiple directories, multiple Go files, multiple modules within that may need to interact. For example, let's say UPF controller or IPAM. So to me, that's an integration testing of sorts. So that needs to happen in the individual repo. In that way, basically what we are testing in that context is we are testing how end-to-end that particular, let's say, IPAM works. All the different submodules within the IPAM, are they integrating properly like we wanted? So that kind of integration testing, in my view, should reside inside that repo only. So what you just described is more like a system test, if in my nomenclature. So that should reside in this particular centralized repo, like you mentioned.
Right. Yeah. If you're following that nomenclature, then yes. So all the tests that's meant for IPAM, right? Whether it's on a file basis or across IPAM, will reside in IPAM, for example.
Yes. So
all the tests that is combining different repositories, for example, will live here.
Got it. So, okay, I just wanted to make that understanding clear for all of us. So basically, the individual repos are responsible for creating integration tests pertaining to that particular repo.
Yeah, you could say that. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else anyone wants to share? I think Balaji's hand is raised.
Sorry, I just
that was the question was Balaji.
Okay. Sorry.
So yes.
So in terms of next steps, one is for I think Wim just mentioned that they're going to try integrating with our Prow with IPAM, right? Whatever we have set up. And the next thing is also, I think, for us to accept those PRs, right? Stephen, what we were mentioning was, if we accept those PRs, then I also want to take a crack at trying whatever we have set up for one summit, and see if there is some way, if there is 1 or 2 scripts that we need to invoke to set that up, right? Then I want to see if we can somehow invoke that from the Prow infrastructure and see if we can spin that thing from Prow, right? If we can do that, then the next thing is for us to figure out how we do the systems test, which is across everything. And we need to see what framework we can use for that. Because ideally what we want to do is spin and push PRs, sorry, CRDs, right? Sorry, Wim, go ahead.
Good.
Yeah, so sorry, I was not. Yeah, so I think it might be good that we pick Gitea as a Git, because otherwise one of the things that you have is that we we create repos, right? With Gitea, when you reinstall, you basically kill the thing and you restart it, and you basically create the repos again from scratch, which with GitHub is a bit more challenging typically.
So
so we have two, let's say, Git backends, if you will, that we have that we are using into the scripts. One is Gitea, which is a local repo that is spun up as a container, and you have the GitHub global public environment as well. What I'm trying to say is that there is a delete repo script, right? So you can delete all the Git repos. But I found it sometimes easier to use Gitea because then you are not depending on any public infrastructure. So you have everything local. I don't know, typically in system tests, if you have too many dependencies external, it might create some other challenges. So I was proposing to use Gitea as a base to do the testing.
So Wim, can you
So Wim,
educate?
to your point,
I think-
we are both the delete Gitea repos and also GitHub, right? We probably want both those use cases testing to be done because we already have it. But you are saying that Gitea is easier, basically.
It's more contained, so you have everything under control, right? Whereas in GitHub, if the API server of GitHub is overloaded, right, your test might fail. You see,
something to be aware of. Okay.
I see. So I'm still trying to piece this together. So so Wim, in this hypothetical example, right, we have this IPAM GitHub project, right, and then let's say we have a 5G core topology project, right, and we want to, let's say, load both these binaries from these repositories into a kind cluster eventually, right, and test it. So where is the Gitea project coming into the picture?
Yeah, so maybe let me clarify a little bit. So there is, we are using GitHub in various places, right? So of course, at the moment we use GitHub to store the code in the repos for, let's say, the IPAM, but also what you're just showing here is all GitHub based, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's fine. I think when you install the environment, we also use GitHub to store to create packages and repos for the packages that we are using to deploy the Nefio project, right? Mm-hmm. For that, what I'm trying to say, in the Ansible installation environment, we created two options: either use the public GitHub environment, or use a Gitea process, which is basically Git, so a Git-based project, but it's actually spun as a container next to the kind clusters on which we run our functions and our controllers. So as a result, if let's say Porch creates a package with Gitea, it's a local call to the Gitea container that runs locally. Whereas if you create a central Git or the repo in the central GitHub account, you actually create it on the GitHub server. You see what I'm saying?
I see.
So essentially, you are saying that for GitOps that we internally use Gitea.
Yes, so in the Ansible playbook, you have two options. When you put the configuration file, you can either say GitHub and use the GitHub credentials. So you have to set that up. Whereas in Gitea, it's all locally within the containers that you spin up. So also the username and password, is local. So you have, what I'm trying to say is that you have more control over the environment. The only dependency you still have is, I think, so there's a few packages which are still, although, yes, so there is some GitHub packages that there is a dependency upon that we install. And then there is the images, which I think today are on John's, I don't know, I think he's on John's registry, I think.
So that's something we wanted to move to
the
Nefio GCP project that we have. We haven't done.
I think so. Yeah.
So sorry, one follow-up question. So the Gitea thing that you're mentioning, Wim, is just for the GitOps, right? Not like meaning Porsche integrates with this Gitea so that we don't have to make GitHub calls, right? That's the only part.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
I see. Okay, understood.
And in the Ansible environment, you have both options at the moment. So you could either use Gitea or GitHub. So you have a choice when you create this configuration file. So there's a config file, nephew.yaml. And in that, you can, depending on how you configure it, use one or the other.
Yeah, and I've tested both of them work. So I
Yeah.
was able to use it. So that's good.
No, okay, that's great.
And down in the Docker thing only uses Gitea. I think it's at the moment only with Gitea.
Okay, that
Yeah,
probably needs
that's
to
a
be
good
put in
point.
the
Because I'm
meeting
guessing
room.
they have no assumptions that you're going to go out to the network to fetch anything, right?
Yeah.
On the Docker thing.
Yeah, plus he
Yeah,
installs everything, right? He installs everything to Ansible. So when he creates his Docker image, he has to make a decision.
Yeah, actually,
Right.
that's a good point, Pim, because probably obviously for integration testing, if there are too many PRs running, I totally get your point. If we internally create too many Git repos, that goes to GitHub, and then we have seen that fail actually when we were creating the repos for the in the workshop, right? When we make too many
Yeah.
requests, it
Yeah,
failed.
you have that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a
Yeah.
good point for GitOps to use the approach that you suggested. But from I think for the
Well, part
general
of that is
story
because
Aravind is presenting,
we
that's-
created like
that's
600
another.
repos on the same account. So
Yes.
that's one of the
Yeah.
problem too.
But
Yeah.
you still need to have some integration that you run on a daily basis with the GitHub to make sure it is not broken for somebody.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But
Hey, so Stephen, I think was supposed to drop off, but to grab some lunch, but stayed back. Are you and Arvind planning to have any sort of like a task list for anybody in the community to look at that and try to start contributing, or is it in the plans for you
Yeah,
guys?
so framework wise, yeah. So this is the immediate things that we're looking at. I mean, but framework is framework, right? It's light to make something work. The big thing is moving forward. How do we? So SIG2 would have to give us Vim's here. SIG2 would have to give us components to create repos. We do want to put this in action soon. But then again, we don't know what the components are. And then what the official repo structure is going to be like. What Arwen is working really hard to get going is we know we can point proud to any of this, and it is running. Proud is running on a Nephew account in Google in GKE, so we can point to any of the repos. But then at this point, one thing we want to resolve is we do know we have to run tests on an integration test bed in an automated fashion. So that's the next thing to try, to make sure that what you folks work really hard for on the ONE summit to set up that infra that we'll incorporate that as our official CI. So we talk about that even post summit. So I don't think we ever deviated from saying that let's use that for our CI. And then so we just try and make sure that we can automate the creation of this. Or do we what kind of options do we have? We can obviously just run a VM, long running VMs on the Nephew Google account and use that as a periodic test too. But then it depends on the feature sets, I guess we have from SIG2 side, that it is possible that you want to create different topologies moving forward. So it's actually a little more flexible if we can hook it up and then create setups in a more automated fashion. So that's one thing, getting out of the way. In terms of long-term sustainability of what goes into the release and elements of pieces that we're working on, I think Awan actually has made the first crack based on his studying of the Kubernetes release process, as well as how Proud is being used there, that he's going to come up with some work that may actually be, we should actually share with the community. So I think that should come out soon.
Yeah, so on that point, I'll just to add to Stephen, right? Like there are two, the way I see it, the three different distinct work items that we need help from the SIG release, right? Like one is test infrastructure and maintaining the test infrastructure. So that test infrastructure includes maintaining Prow. So we have spun up Prow, right, with some basic understanding of Prow that we have, but there are some work items that we need to do in ways we configure Prow. So that's one kind of line of work items, we will create issues to the earlier point for each of these. That's one place where we need help. The second place where we need help is whatever we just discussed, right? The integration test bed and how that integrates with Prow. That's the second thing. And the third thing is, in general, in SIG release, we want to define processes, right? Like when it comes to, like, we are getting a nephew R1 is around the corner. Like, how do we do releases? What is the release cadence? And so on and so forth. What are the process? How do people start contributing, like code contributions, let's say, to all of these repos, right? So we need to set guidelines. So that's something we are working on. So that's a third work stream, if you will, right? And for each of these work streams, we will create issues and figure out like how all of us can collaborate on. Maybe this is something we can discuss in the next SIG release as one of the topics, and kind of touch upon these 3 different work streams. And maybe we'll also try to create issues for some of these.
Yeah. If we for before the next meeting, maybe set up all the issues. Or actually, if we can do it before then, we may want to post the list of where the issues are filed. Well, it's going to be on the repo. So we're gonna create a SIG release repo. I think you already did, right?
Yeah, we already have a SIG release
Okay.
repo, so maybe we
Yeah.
can
we can file issues on that, and
then
yeah, and then we can let the community know, and then before the next meeting, hopefully you guys get a chance to read them. Obviously, by the way, you folks been working. I mean, outside of our and outside of any Google people, you folks has been working hard on that setup. So feel free to file issues on what actually needs to be done to, to make it more solid, more stable, and more automated.
Sounds good.
Yeah. One comment. I mean, it's a great plan. Thank you, Arvind and Stephen. Yeah, obviously the test infrastructure issues we could create on the SIG release side, and that is very the boundaries are well defined. That does not transcend at least at this point of time, creating the initial infrastructure. And then and the second thing is obviously the processes and stuff like that, that's going to affect everyone. But when it comes to the actual material work, right, let's say we are doing one user story that is defined by SIG1 and then implemented by SIG2, and then it need not happen this way. I'm just for the convenience sake I'm saying. Then obviously the SIG release is creating the infrastructure for the release of that feature through automated testing, CI/CD, things like that. So for that, let's say, let that piece of work, how do we define the tasks for that? So ideally, it will all define in a single backlog, where artificially we don't need to separate them into 3 different backlogs. So that's where I'm thinking, how do we define, given our user story, all the tasks of all the SIG releases, all the tasks for all the SIGs in a single backlog, so that we can tackle them as a single piece of work rather than artificially dividing them into multiple. So Stephen, do you have any suggestions there, or do you want to do it one way or the other?
So I can chime.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, I can chime in. So this is something we have been internally discussing as part of the process, right? Like how do we do GitHub project management and as such. So you're absolutely right. There are a couple of approaches, right? Like let's say we want to achieve a high level goal that SIG-ARC has set up. There is multiple work streams, right? SIG1, SIG2, SIG3. Option 1 is for each of these SIGs, we could create separate repositories and create issues. And then we could tackle it that way. Or option 2 is just create one common repository, if you will, and then create issues and then label each of these issues with the appropriate SIG name.
Yeah.
And we could manage it that way as well. So those are the 2 options. And that we as a community kind of need to align on which approach we want to take. So this is part of the process thing that we want to discuss, like in the next SIG release, the different options. And then we can kind of vote on it, maybe in the doc or maybe here, and decide on one approach.
Yeah, that's exactly. So I personally prefer a single backlog because it's kind of visible, again, I agree with you. The community has to decide, but I just wanted to, since I raised the topic, I just wanted to say my preference. Uh, a single backlog is great in the sense that it gives a picture in a single place to all
Right.
the stakeholders, and we all know when the work is done, when the what work is pending. We don't have to look at multiple places, and the what we call as a done criteria, right? So we
Mhm.
exactly know when the work is actually done, because that means everyone, all the stakeholders that we needed to work on that item is done. The other thing is there is in the new GitHub issues, it also gives us an option to create tasks for a particular. We could have something like more like a epic and stories in the Jira world, right? We have epics and stories. Similarly, we can have that in the GitHub too, but it is a new workflow. I think Kubernetes is not using that workflow, if I understand correctly. I may be wrong, but probably that is something we can use in the GitHub to organize work so that we can create one larger epic which encompasses.
Multiple reports.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah, cross SIG stuff, I would have to say we haven't actually really defined, because in theory, for example, I think Kaushik's and SIG1's document or user journey. The second one is you can create another cluster and spin another UPF. I think that's use case number 2. So that would have impact on us on SIG3, because, for example, you'll be able create cluster is never it's still not part of the scope for Nephew 1.0, but then at least us and the automation testbed would have to be creating that cluster
Exactly.
with the Nephew CLDs, and so you can actually try to see if you can create that extra UPF, and then to validate that, and then that would becomes a requirement that trickles down to 6, 2, and 3, then have to actually do something. So that kind of cross dependencies, I don't think there's any like good definition, good resolutions yet for us. But then yeah, something as simple as actually in a way we as SIG3 should actually decide how mechanically we should do that. So it is one way to basically just creating a repo where cross-SIG or major integration work streams would actually just be part of the issues, because we're actually not introducing new tool chains, right? At this point we converge on GitHub issues already.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the plan is we will be sharing a doc that kind of talks about some of these, in general, the project management, release cycle, and everything, and we can plan to discuss this in greater detail in the next SIG release meeting.
Yeah, when actually I had I think I had put together one doc in the I think
Balaji did that. Yes.
Yeah, I think probably we can. I don't know what I did,
Yeah,
honestly. It's a long time back. I almost forgot what I did. Probably we can take a look at that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we could do that as well. Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
1 minute left. Anything else? So I guess Alan, you need help? We're gonna file issues anyway, so we'll talk to the community through Slack. I'll saying that, but then individually you reaching out to Vim and Vish to see whether or not that the integrations of the setup something that you need some help to resolve.
Right. Yeah. For unit test, I think they're going to try, and if there is
yeah,
issues,
so Vim will take the bold step of trying. We'll probably create a repo for Vim to try.
Yeah, I'll do the proud. I'll reach out to you, Aravind. So I'll do the proud thing in the IPAM already, and then we just need to do the test to.
You need a different repo. I can give you a repo for that too. So currently your part of your code is in one summit. Part of your code on POCs, and the other part of your code is on your own repo. Your actual IPAM controllers is on your own repo. So I don't know what how you want to migrate some of the things in Nephew.
So at the moment I have, this is always an open point, which we never took further, is the IPAM was supposed to join the Nephew thing at some point. I don't know, but we never did it because of time. So I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll discuss it. I'll have tomorrow a call with John to line up after he's back.
So
I think in the meantime. So
this is your decision. Just tell us. Because SIG2 will have to say these are the components, and then we'll create a repo as it comes.
But I start to
Okay.
prepare all the module tests in it already, so independent of what happens. So it's always a good thing to do, right? So and we could use it to test the PRAO. That was my idea, because whether it's inside or outside the FU at the moment, I just want to test the whole concept, that at least we have some unit testing going, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So that should be easy thing to do. So if you have, once we give you a repo with PRAO hooked up, testing your unit test as a pre-submit should be something we have to verify very quickly. We should be able to verify very quickly.
Even with the
Sorry.
current Vim's repo, we should be able to test. Like you can try
Yeah.
if it works as it is. But yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Stephen. If you can take a
Thank
look at that PR along with and let John.
Yeah.
John
I
look
mean,
at
the
it.
whole list of like 7 or 8 PLs now. So yeah, I know. Sorry.
Where
Thank you.
where do we submit the issue?
Against a repo. So
In the repo.
yeah, against a particular repository.
So was the question specific to one workflow issues, or was the question in general for SIG release?
List of SIG released. Right.
So we have a SIG release repo. So I mean, we just created it as a placeholder. We haven't discussed with the community yet, but that's one place we could start filing issues, which are in general.
Yeah, Arvind and Stephen, I mean, I'm willing to work with you on the process side as well.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
We can collaborate offline as well. Yep. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's connect on Slack on this.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
like,
Let's work on
discussion
this.
should be public. Okay.
Yes. Okay. All right. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Awesome.
Have a good one. Take care.
Everyone.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.